the pack bared down. Tyreek went to town. There was a game on Wednesday afternoon. Will Fuller is a buffoon, and Derrick Henry has a crowd. Welcome to the Mish Po. All right, as I'm sure you can tell again, I have upgraded the microphone quality. Again, I always just like improving, so that's what I did. Um, but that's really only the big difference here. Got myself a beer. This time it's a Natty Day Light. Another day. Oh yeah, we'll pour that in nice and slow. We don't want to get a lot ahead, so decent speed. All right. And like last week, I know obviously you can't see me flip it, but I'm gonna flip it again. So we're gonna go with Caleb, and of course it did not land. So take a quick sip, I guess. Alrighty. So we're entering the final week of the regular season, which is super exciting. Because this is a make or break week for a lot of people. Myself not included. I am officially eliminated from playoffs along with a handful of other teams. But we will get there in a little bit. But yeah, week 13, final week of the regular season for fantasy football for us. So that's kind of exciting. A lot of stuff is going to go down this week. It's going to be very interesting, I'd say. Honestly, this is probably going to be the most interesting week so far in terms of fantasy football this season for us. So, before we get to that, though, we're just going to jump in to this past week's matchups. We're going to start with a game that was determined. The winner was determined today. This first one is me versus Caleb. I had some rough news to start the week with, with the Steelers-Ravens game being postponed until Wednesday, which is the day that I'm recording this, a bit later in the day that I normally record it, as there was a Wednesday afternoon game today, as I alluded to earlier. This game, it came down to today. Specifically, Ben Roethlisberger, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool. Caleb had the quarterback, and I had the two receivers. So, I was pretty confident. I was down by 15 points maybe. I made it close, but Caleb got the victory here, 97.54 to 96.52. So that's, what is that, 1.02 points. So while that is very close, it is not the closest matchup of the week. But before we jump on, I just want to highlight a couple players here. Like I said, as I was about to say earlier, right after we received the news about the Steelers-Ravens game, I heard that JT was put on the COVID list. So I had to make a pivot, picked up Jordan Wilkins. He did decently, 8.7, not that great. Obviously, if he would have caught one more pass, it would have been superb for him, for me. But Duke Johnson did great for Caleb. Had that really nice touchdown catch Thanksgiving, which got him. That helped him get to the total of 17 flat. Also on Caleb's side, Saints defense got 14, Nelson Aguilar 10.4, but other than those two guys, not too much. But luckily for my side of the ball, also not too much. I also got 14 from my defense, the Dolphins, and Jason Myers, he got 12 points. Very nice kicking there for Jason. Robert Woods got 15.8, so not the 30 points that he put up the week prior, and I really could have used that, but, Daryl Henderson 1.9, so obviously not that great. And then Taysom Hill got 17.52. But yeah, Caleb ended up winning this matchup. very, very close like. However, this next matchup is not close at all, and it went a bit different than I'm sure everybody thought. It is Michael versus Fiala. Uh, Kyler did not play very well at all. He only put up 8.9 points. Josh Jacobs only put up 4.4. Jared Cook put up a stinky 0 over. He was targeted twice, and he only had 0 receptions. Obviously, if he has 0 points. CD Lamb only got 7.1, but then there was Calvin Ridley put up 17, and Wayne Gallman's continuing to impress. He put up 18.1, 10.5 from D-Hop, and then 14 from the Steelers defense, so not too much going on there. However, on the other side of the ball, 16 points for the Packers defense. Nick Folk, kicker for the Patriots, he put up 10. Curtis Samuel, 12.7. Eric Ebron, 12.4. 36 from Antonio Gibson, and then 25.18 from Kirk Cousins. Final score of this matchup was Michael beating Fiala 131.28 to 89. So pretty exciting stuff right there. Next matchup is T-Corn versus Brian. This matchup was also not that close, but it was not all that surprising as well. Justin Herbert put up a not super great 15.44 season low for him, I get, maybe for the season since he took over. No, he had 13.7 week 3 versus Carolina. But yeah, other than that matchup, this is his season low. Not that great. Chris Carson was able to rumble for 13.9. Chase Edmonds, however, fell flat with 8.3. Terry McLaurin had 16.2. Keenan Allen had 16. And TJ Hawkinson put up 13.9. But then the football team's defense put up 16. So that's all for T-Corn right there. And then on Brian's side of the ball, Aaron Rodgers, 25.64. Nicholas Chubb, 26.6. Will Fuller, in his final matchup of the season, because of his caught PAD or PED, what have you, 35.1. So not a bad finish to the season, but obviously you want him for the rest of the season. So that's a bit of a crappy situation for you, Brian. And then 26 from Justin Jefferson. He's really emerging as a very young star. I mean, as are a lot of rookies in this draft class. Chase Claypool, Justin Jefferson. And obviously there's more, but just off the top of my head, those are the two big names that pop out to me in terms of rookie receivers impressing in the NFL this season. Final score for this matchup was 144.64 to 110.84. T-Corn got beat by Brian. Next matchup, we've got State Farm versus Colin. This one was quite a bit closer than the previous two matchups discussed. A difference of less than 5. So that's pretty exciting. On State Farm side of the ball, James Robinson got 25.9. Brandon Cooks put up 13.5, about to become the number one receiver for Houston there. Devontae put up 10.1 or 18.10. Mike Gesicki put 11.5 up on the board, and Greg the Leg put up 10 himself. Moving on to Colin's side, Deshaun Watson's been continuing to play very well. Put up a solid 33.12 this past week. AJ Brown put up 25.8. I have him in a different league, and I was pretty happy with how he was performing. And then I stopped watching that game for a little bit, and then I saw he scored a touchdown. But I'm like, how did he score that touchdown? It was on that crazy onside kick. I don't know if you guys saw that. I obviously didn't live, but I saw the replays later on YouTube. Pretty nice if you can get a free touchdown like that off of a onside kick. So, and then there's Travis Kelce, put up 16.2. And the Rams defense put up 18 points. I had to double check that number there and make sure it was an 8, not a 0. Pretty impressive there by the Rams. Final score for this one, Colin beat State Farm 116.02 to 111.94. Moving on to Bruce versus Adam. We're going to start with Adam on this one. Russell Wilson did not cook very well this past week, only putting up 14.4. Jacoby Myers, almost said Jason Myers, but Jacoby Myers, 10.2 points. Mike Evans did well, put up 20 points. Trey Burton put up 13.2. Pretty good for him. And Will Lutz, his kicker, put up 8 points for Adam. On the other side, the Colts defense, not that great, -3. Evan Ingram put up 15.9, so pretty good for him. Josh Allen, not too great, 15.48, but oh, man, I don't know if you guys heard about that Chiefs game, but that first quarter for Tyreek Hill, it was something else. I don't remember. There was a tweet sent out about if you took that first quarter and statted him out for the entire season, he would have something. It was insane. It was insane numbers. I don't remember. He'd have like over 100 touchdowns. A boatload of other. It was insane. Tyreek Hill finished the week with 57.9 points. It's just listed 13 receptions, 269 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That sounds like something that I would be doing in Madden. But nope, that happened in real life against a real NFL team. And it's not a team that was bad at all. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've got a pretty solid defense. So, man, this is, I mean, Bruce obviously has got a pretty solid team all around. But this is twice now that Bruce, in my opinion, has been more or less bailed out by an extraordinary player. This week, obviously, it was Tyreek. But that one week, it was Kenyon Drake who scored that 60-yard touchdown with 2 minutes left in the game. That got him the win. But obviously, you know, if Tyreek Hill would have scored, you know, if you had one less touchdown, he wouldn't have beat Adam. But yeah, I mean, Bruce is able to get the right guys out there. And got himself the victory's final score, 112.48 to 99.4. So tough loss for Adam right there. But, you know, that's fantasy. Speaking of tough losses, we are moving on to Macy versus Lincoln. This one was pretty brutal for one of the teams involved. Patrick Mahomes, just mentioned Tyreek, did very well. You know, that goes along with the quarterback doing very well. Patrick Mahomes put up 30.28. Latavius Murray put up 12.6, outscoring Alvin Kamara by about 4. So Sterling Shepard got 13.8. DK, you know, just a measly 27.7. That guy's going places. Darius Slayton, however, got 0 points. Jason Sanders 12, and the Ravens defense got 10. But then we move on to Macy's side. Matt Ryan put up 14.9. Eckler, in his return, put up 23.9. Hunter Renfrow, 14.3. Richard Rodgers, 14.3. I don't know if you guys watched that game, but that touchdown catch by Richard Rodgers, I believe he's the only player in NFL history to have, 2 Hail Marys catches in his career. Obviously, the first one was against the Lions, with the Packers on a Thursday night. And actually, a funny story about that game. I had been watching that game. It was my freshman year in college. I was watching that game, and at the halftime, the Lions were winning, and it was quite handed. They were winning by quite a bit. I don't remember exactly how much, but it was definitely enough to cause me to kind of give up on the game. And so I went and I watched Krampus, the Christmas movie that came out in whatever year that was, 2016, 2015. Decent movie, but I checked my phone after the movie had ended, I believe it was after the movie ended, and I had an alert that the Packers won. So I'm like, oh, dope, Packers won. But then I saw that I think I saw a notification. It was like 0 seconds left on the clock. Aaron Rodgers to Richard Rodgers for a 61-yard touchdown. I'm like, oh, really? But yeah, if that one Lions defensive player wouldn't have face masked Rodgers right there, obviously they would have won the game because that was an untimed down. So, man, does he have a vintage moment in him? Yes, Richard Rodgers does. Had the Hail Mary catch against the Seahawks. Obviously, it didn't end up mattering because the Seahawks ended up winning 23-17. If they would, man, could you imagine if the Seahawks didn't recover that onside kick? If they would have pulled a Packers and had the ball bounce off the face of a tight end or something when their star receiver is right behind them, to allow the onside kicking team to recover the ball, score, and then send the game to overtime. Obviously, in this case, it was a 6-point game, so unless the touchdown was scored but no kick was made, obviously it wouldn't have been a tie. But similar situation. But where was I? Yeah, this matchup was very close. Came down to the literal wire. And Macy ended up getting the victory 128.6 to 128.18. So extremely close, extremely tough loss there for Lincoln. And that matchup had some pretty serious playoff implications, as we will get to in a bit. But before we get to that, and before we move on to the next segment, we've got one more matchup to cover. Derek versus Sam. This one is quite the polar opposite of the previous matchup we just covered. While the one we just covered, that one was the closest matchup of the week. It appears, doing a quick glance over the scores here, that this one was the biggest defeat in terms of point differential of the week. So we'll just start with Derek's team. Cam Newton, 5.96, not super great. Kenyon Drake got pretty decent, 12 or 24.3, scoring 2 touchdowns. Mike Davis had 10.9 in his re-emerged starter role after second injury to Christian McCaffrey. Devontae Parker, 18.9 with the bearded wizard back behind quarterback. Rob Gronkowski, 16.6. But other than that, not too much to write home about. Moving on to the other side of the ball, however, wowza. Tom Brady, 23.7. Derrick Henry, 38.5. Ronald Jones, 17.3. Robbie Anderson, 19.4. T. Higgins, 15.4. Austin Hooper, not too great, 9.3. But then there's Allen Robinson, 27.4. His kicker, Dan Carlson, got 6, and the Buccaneers defense got 5, so not too great from those two positions. However, the rest of the team was able to make up the difference. Final score of this matchup. Sam won 162 to 98.66, and Sam, he won the beer for this past week. However, he did donate it to T-Corn for some reasons. So, congratulations, Sam and T-Corn. So, big week for both of you. Alrighty. Now on to, I'm sure, everyone's favorite part of the Mishpo, the power rankings. First up at number 14, we've got Michael. Despite having a pretty convincing victory this past week against Fiala, you are still tied for the worst record on the season, and you are last place in terms of total points scored amongst those who have scored or who have a 3-9 record. And actually, just taking a quick skim here, it seems like you do have the lowest point total scored amongst everybody. So, not to say that your team is bad, Michael, but statistically, it is. You go up against a pretty decent opponent this upcoming week. You do have the shot to play Fantasy Heartbreaker, so I'm sure that's what you're playing for. Number 13, we've got Derek. You, as I have just mentioned, lost to Sam pretty good. Um, Not you did pretty good in terms of points ish, I guess, but fell short there in the matchup. Just to be, this upcoming matchup, it's against a team that, um, in pretty much all ways, shape, and form, is better than you. And this matchup, in honesty, doesn't really mean much. But we'll see. You can end off the regular season if you can end off with a victory here. Number 12, we've got myself. I lost a pretty close, heartbreaking matchup to Caleb. And as you will see in a few moments, if I would have won, this upcoming week could be different. However, not too much different, but still a little bit of a fun thing. This upcoming week, I play a team that's got some more riding on this upcoming week, so we'll see if I can, cost stuff to mix up here. So that's me at 12. Number 11, we've got Samuel. Convincing victory this past week against Derek. If only you could have put up that number of points this whole season. This season could have turned out differently for you, but stuff happens. You're going up against an opponent that is similarly matched to you. So we'll see how well you can do in your Week 13 matchup. Which moves us on to number 10. Caleb, you broke my heart. I was, oh, yeah, by the way, Bree and I closed on our house on Tuesday of this week. So that's pretty exciting, I think. And, I was watching the Steelers-Ravens game. And then I went to halftime. We headed over to the house, and I got back. I'm like, all right, let's finish this game. But I sat down in my chair and turned on the TV. Was like, all right, let's get some football on. And I was looking at the scores, and I'm like, oh, I'm super close. Just one more catch from one of my receivers, and I probably got the victory here. But little did I know, the game had literally just ended, and that score was final. So I had lost in a heartbreaking fashion. Not quite as heartbreaking to Lincoln, which obviously I've covered a little bit, but heartbreaking nonetheless. So, yeah, I'm at 12, or no, who was I talking about? Caleb, right. He beat me. Upcoming week, he's got a decent opponent. Somewhat of a playoff implication in this matchup, as we all get to. I keep alluding to this, so you guys are probably expecting some pretty spectacular thing. Don't, I guess, it's a bit more than I usually do on a given week because I don't usually talk about playoff implications every week, but, we're reaching the end here, and so I thought I'd throw in a little bit of a special thing. So that's Caleb at number 10. Number 9, we've got Adam. You just narrowly lost to Bruce, who was aided by a guy who scored about half his team's points, so I wouldn't feel too bad. Literally, if he had any other, well, not any other wide receiver in that position, things would have turned out differently. Actually, he probably, literally, if you had any other receiver in that slot, any other player, honestly, Adam probably would have won. You could have thrown in a quarterback heckin'. Maybe, I don't know. But, yeah, I wouldn't feel too bad, Adam. You've got a decent amount to play for this upcoming week. And your opponent is a pretty decent opponent, so we'll see how well you can do. Which moves us on to number 8. We've got Colin. You had a pretty convincing victory over State Farm, one of the top teams in this league, in terms of, record and just team. So pretty good for you there. This upcoming week, you are facing off against an opponent that also put up good points this past week. So we'll see if you can keep things going and continue your win streak in your final playoff push for this week. Moving us on to number 7. We've got Lincoln. Man, I've kind of mentioned this to the floor here. Tough loss for you this past week. Definitely something that you wanted to get the victory in this past week. But not all hope should be lost for you, as you have a decent shot, I think, to make the playoffs this upcoming week. Your opponent, however, is a pretty decent one in their own right. So we'll see how things can go for you. Moving on to number 6, we've got Alex Fiala. Um, you lost to Michael, and that was a tough matchup. I think a lot of people were probably expecting you to win there, but sometimes the things just don't go your way. But you're still right in the thick of it for the playoffs, so I wouldn't feel too down on yourself. You are going up against a decent opponent this upcoming week, however, and so you're definitely going to want to set your best lineup and hope some things go your way, and we'll see how you can do this upcoming week. Moving us on to number 5, we've got Macy Brown. Tough matchup you had. Beat Lincoln quite narrowly. And I did notice that you apologized in the chat when Lincoln expressed his upsetness. But I know deep down inside you're glad you got that victory, and you're assuming some catastrophic thing doesn't. Obviously, we'll get to that, but you're definitely in line to make the playoffs. So this upcoming week, however, is a very, very important one, as it quite literally is make or break for you. So we'll see how well you can do. Moving us on to number 4, we've got T-Corn. This past week, you lost a pretty close. Close? Was it close? I don't know. I say things and then like 10 minutes later, I completely forget what I said. It wasn't close. You lost pretty handedly to Brian. And so, and actually, I'm kind of a mess right now. I have this whole docket, everything. It's got all the information that I need for this, a combination of what I've got on my computer, and I just look back at the scores on Sleeper on my phone. And I had in the slot for, and this is a bit of the behind the scenes action here. For T-Corn, I wrote in the power rankings, I always do what the previous matchup results were, so either beat or lost to, and then plays, so I can mention who they, or talk about generally who they play next week. And in T-Corn's slot, I put lost to, which is correct, but then I put T-Corn, so that made me question if he actually lost, which obviously he still did, but he didn't lose to himself, because you can't play yourself in this league. So yeah, you lost to Brian there, T-Corn. But you still have one of the best rosters, I think, in the league. Definitely a shoo-in for the playoffs, as we, going up this list is true for a lot of these teams. But this upcoming week, I was deciding on whether or not to make a jokey remark about this team or to play it straight. So I'm not going to tell you which one I'm doing, but this will definitely be a tough matchup. So that's what you got yourself looking forward to. T-Corn at number 4. Moving on to number 3, we've got Brian, the victor in the T-Corn Brian matchup of this season. Doing well this season so far. You did take a blow in losing Will Fuller. So that's kind of sucky, but regardless, I think you still have one of the best rosters of the league. However, this upcoming matchup is not easy by any means. So we'll see how well you can do. Moving on to number 2, we've got State Farm. Lost to Colin this past week, and just looking at my notes here, it was a decently close matchup. A couple things here and there would have changed, and you could have got yourself a victory there, but nope. You lost, and this upcoming week, it's not much easier, as you do face a pretty tough opponent. So we'll see how well you can do. Which brings us to number 1, Bruce. You beat Adam. You got, as I mentioned, helped out quite a bit by Tyreek Hill. But regardless of that, you have week in and week out been one of the most consistent teams. I'd say one of the more high scoring teams, and obviously, you're freaking 11-0, so not much to argue with that. You're cut and clear, the best team in the regular season, um, this year. This upcoming matchup, I, it you should win, I think, but everything and anything can definitely happen in fantasy. So that concludes this week's power rankings. Alrighty, we are now moving on to the fun little playoff implications segment, where I will just quickly go over all of the scenarios and already determined facts about this year's playoffs. So, we're just going to start off with the for sure things. The for sure teams that are currently eliminated for the playoffs, and I guess after this week will still be eliminated, are Michael, Derek, myself, and Sam. We are all mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. On the other side, teams that are mathematically locked into the playoffs are Bruce, Brian, and State Farm. So, and Bruce has the first seed locked, and I'll just get to it right now. Brian and State Farm play each other. They both have the same record, and that record is tied for second best in the league. So if you put 2 and 2 together, the winner of this matchup this week will determine who gets a first round bye and is the number 2 seed of the playoffs. So obviously both teams are in the playoffs, but it just teams can possibly lose in the first round. Obviously, two or four, however, 2 teams will lose in the first round, and if you win this week, that team is not going to be you for sure. So, not as big implications in this matchup as are in other matchups, but still something to play for. So, teams that are in control of their own destiny, meaning if they win, they're in. So there's 2 teams here. We got T-Corn and Macy. They are both sitting at 7-5. If both of them win, they are both in the playoffs. Simple as that. So if T-Corn can beat me, and if Macy can beat where is she at? If she can beat Fiala, then they're both in the playoffs. Otherwise, it's going to come down to total points, which is as follows. If T-Corn loses, he needs to score at least 35.86 more points than Lincoln, assuming Lincoln wins. Obviously, if Lincoln loses, then it doesn't really matter. But if Lincoln wins, he has to score 35.86. And you're probably wondering, Joey, there's other teams that are 6-6. Well, Lincoln out of those 6-6 teams, Fiala out of those 6-6 teams has the most points, and he is currently locked into the playoffs. And so I just went with Lincoln, who is currently a team on the bubble, and he needs to score 35.86 more points than him. Fiala has a handful. He has 3.4 point something more points than Lincoln, so it's basically 30, 40 more points than Fiala, I guess. But obviously in the other teams, so Colin and Adam are also 6-6. He'll have to score not quite that much more than them, but still, you don't want to lose, basically, if you're T-Corn or Macy. If Macy loses, however, she will need to score 183.64 more points than Lincoln, 102.78 more points than Colin, and 54.84 more points than Adam, assuming they all win, which, when I made this up, I did not realize that Adam and Lincoln play each other, so obviously only one of them can win. Obviously they could tie, which is definitely something that could happen, but yeah. So basically I'd say my best advice is for both of you guys to win, especially Macy, because if she loses, it's pretty likely that she'll miss the playoffs. But obviously, Ticorn, you want to score a lot of points this week, so teams in control of their own destiny. Ticorn and Macy. Now moving on to teams that need a win and a lot of help. There's one team in this category, which is Caleb, and he needs losses or ties by Fiala, Lincoln, Colin, and Adam, and to have a higher point total than all of them. Out of the 4 teams I just mentioned, Fiala is currently in the playoffs. So if he were to dethrone Fiala, or for him to dethrone Fiala, he would need to not only win, have all of those things happen, and score 205, at least 205.73 more points than Fiala. And like I just mentioned, Colin and Lincoln and Adam play each other this week. So if one of the teams wins, if it's not a tie, Caleb is out of the playoffs, but there is still, I guess, a shot for him to make it. But it's not super likely. And so, yeah, there's a couple. Obviously, he has to score more points than all the teams. Fiala is the highest point total to overcome at 205.72. So, like I said, not super likely, but definitely a possibility. So, we're going to move on to teams that need a win and some help. So, if only one of these teams wins, out of Fiala, Lincoln, Colin, and Adam, that one team is in the playoffs. And so, let's say Fiala loses his matchup to Macy, and Colin loses his matchup to Michael. The winner of Adam and Lincoln will be in the playoffs. However, if multiple teams wins, whoever has the highest point total obviously will win. So, out of those 4 teams, the one team that has the highest point total is Fiala with 1,485.28, followed by Lincoln at 1,482.02, which is a difference of 3.26 points, followed by Colin at 1,401.16 points, which is a difference of 84.12. And following that is Adam at 1,353.22, a difference of 132.06. And the differences are from Fiala, because he is currently leading the pack, so it doesn't really matter if Adam has more points than Colin, because both teams will miss the playoffs. So, it's pretty interesting. Oh, also, just going back to the Bryant State Farm, obviously whoever wins gets the higher seed. But if for some reason, if somehow they tie, State Farm would have the first round bye because he just narrowly has more points than Brian. So a lot of things could happen this upcoming week. And if I had to guess the teams that would make the playoffs, obviously we've got Bruce, Brian, and State Farm. I'm going to assume that T-Corn is also going to make it, as he's playing me, and my team is kind of trash. And then that just comes down to 2 more spots. Currently, it's held by Macy and Fiala. Macy is playing Fiala. So, if Macy, obviously, if she wins, she's in. So there's a very real chance here that Macy misses the playoffs if she loses. Fiala makes it if he wins, based off the point total. And if Lincoln can victory here against Adam, it would be Fiala and Lincoln taking those final 2 spots. And if I was a betting man, that's what I would bet on. So, now that we've kind of covered the playoff implications for this upcoming season, for this upcoming week, we are going to now move on to the Week 13 matchup previews. We are going to be starting with myself versus T-Corn. Key players for me are, first up, Taysom Hill, who last week against a quarterbackless Denver Broncos team, he put up 17.52, which isn't terrible, but he's got a very good rushing attack, and he's going up against the Atlanta Falcons defense this week, who is a team that likes to give up points not only through the air but as well as through the ground. So I'm expecting him to do decently, and who knows? I could sub in Stafford, but as of now, I'm going with Taysom Hill. Second key player for myself is Robert Woods. 2 weeks removed from his big 30-point performance. Last week he did 15.8, so not bad at all. And this week he's going against the Arizona Cardinals defense, who's not that great, and so I'm kind of expecting big points out of him this week. I'm hoping he does that. So those are my key players from my team. Moving on to T-Corn's key players. First up is Justin Herbert. Last week, he, as I mentioned, his second lowest point total since taking over the season against Buffalo. And things don't get too much easier for him as he goes up against the New England Patriots, who's got a pretty stout defense. Obviously not quite as stout as it was last season, but stout nonetheless. We'll see if he can bounce back against a tough defense. He is at home, which doesn't really matter quite so much this season, but it's always nice to play home. Which brings us on to T-Corn's key players. Second key player, Chris Carson. In his first week back, he got 13.9 points, not too bad. However, he's been limited this week and is currently listed as questionable. He's going up against the Giants, who's probably middle of the pack. Honestly, one of the probably better defenses in this league. But definitely a matchup that you would not take against. You would want that matchup, I'd say, for Chris Carson. And they're probably going to get him more involved because it was his first week back last week, so they got Carlos Hyde more touches than you probably wanted there, T-Corn. So we'll see if Chris Carson can perform well this week. My predicted winner for this matchup is T-Corn. Shocker. Next matchup, we've got Michael versus Colin. A important matchup for Colin in terms of playoff implications. Key players here. First up for Michael, we've got Antonio Gibson, who's coming off of a very good performance on Thanksgiving, scoring 36.6 points. However, it goes up against the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming week, who is a very, very good defense. I'm sure they did pretty well against the couple running backs that they had to face today as of this recording. So we'll see if he can keep things going for you. Moving us on to Cooper Kupp, second key player for you this past week. Not the greatest. 6.1 points against San Francisco, and he goes up against the Arizona Cardinals this week, who is another divisional matchup, but this is a bit of an easier in terms of defense divisional matchup. So we'll see how well he can perform and see if we can bounce back for you there. Moving us on to Colin's key players. First up is Deshaun Watson, who feasted on Thanksgiving. It quite literally says that in the sleeper report. Deshaun Watson feasts on Thanksgiving against Lions. He is down, however, his wide receiver one, Will Fuller, the Flying V, super fast boy, was almost straight to the Packers, and thinking, in retrospect, I guess that's, decent, pretty good that he wasn't traded to us, because we would have had him for, 2-3 weeks before he got suspended for PEDs, but, 33.12 points last week and goes up against the Colts this week, who is a pretty solid defense. So we'll see how well Deshaun can play against them. Which brings us to another key player. Just played with the Colts. Decent, 25.8. Is AJ Brown. He goes up against Cleveland this week, who is I think an all-around worst defense, except, Myles Garrett's pretty good. But, So, we'll see how well AJ Brown can perform this week. And my winner for this week, I have Michael as my upset pick. Next matchup, we've got Caleb versus Sam. Key player, Caleb, we've got Mr. Dalvin Cook, only one of the best running backs of the year. However, last week he did not do super great against Carolina, only putting up 9.2. Granted, he did get injured, but he did fumble the ball a couple times, if I remember correctly, in back-to-back drives. It was pretty crazy. That Chin guy, first player in NFL history to score defensive touchdowns on back-to-back plays. Pretty crazy stuff. But yeah, Dalvin Cook, we'll see if he can get back up and running against Jacksonville, who is a pretty good defense to face if you're a running back or a quarterback or a receiver or a tight end or a defense. So we'll see how well Dalvin can do, assuming he plays. Next, we've got Nelson Aguilar. Been doing pretty decent lately. Kansas City 2 weeks ago, he put up 20.8, and then last week against Atlanta put up 10.4, so he literally halved his point total. Hopefully that trend, it doesn't keep continuing for you there, Caleb. He is currently listed as questionable. He did not practice on Wednesday due to an ankle injury, so we'll have to monitor his health on this situation. And you're going to hope that he plays because he goes up against the New York Jets, who their offense has been showing some signs of life, but the defense is still pretty abysmal. So those are the key players for Caleb. Moving on to Sam, key players, we've got Allen Robinson, who I previously mentioned, put up quite a decent amount of points last week against our Green Bay Packers. Not Caleb's Green Bay Packers, but the rest of us as Green Bay's Packers. 27.4 against us. But, he gets an even easier divisional matchup this upcoming week as he faces the Detroit Lions. So, man, Caleb, I'm really kind of shitting all over you right now, but, the Lions kind of suck. And I'm sure Allen Robinson's going to do great things against them. Moving us on to Sam's second key player, Austin Hooper. Last week put up 9.3, not super great, and goes up against Tennessee this week, whose defense is pretty, it's middle of the road. Thought they were going to be good at the start of the year. Turns out not that great. So I'll see if Austin Hooper can keep things rolling. And granted, right now as I'm doing this, Sam currently has in his lineup four players four players and a defense that are currently on bye, so he's going to have to make some lineup changes. But I still do have Caleb as my projected winner, partially because I don't know who Sam's going to plug in, and also just looking at his bench, the options are not that great. So Caleb as my predicted winner for this matchup. Moving us on to Fiala versus Macy. Another matchup that definitely has playoff implications. As I mentioned earlier, if Macy wins, she's in, and if Fiala wins, then he's got a pretty good shot at making it as well. But obviously, only one team can win. Key players for starting off with Fiala, Kyler Murray, who's been a very great quarterback all season long, except for the last week, arguably the last 2 weeks, but this past week for sure, only put up 8.9. Did it have to do with his injury? Potentially. Did it have to do with the New England Patriots defense? Maybe. Well, this week he goes up against the new Los Angeles Rams. I don't know why I said new. I said the New England Patriots a couple times. That's probably why. But goes up against the Los Angeles Rams this upcoming week, whose defense is also pretty good. We'll see if he can fully recover from his shoulder injury and get his legs pumping against this tough Rams defense. Moving us on to another key player for Fiala. He is also questionable right now. Missed practice Wednesday due to an ankle injury. Josh Jacobs only put up 4.4 points last week. And exactly like Nelson Aguilar, he's going up against the New York Jets, who is not that great. So, for Fiala's sake here, we're going to hope that Josh Jacobs and Kyler Murray can both get healthy and play for you this week. Moving us on to Macy's key players. First up, Austin Eckler, who had just returned from his injury, and put up, just about 24 points. So nothing big, no big deal here. But he goes up against the team that Josh Jacobs had just faced, the New England Patriots. Or no, sorry, not Patriots. That's who Kyler faced, the Cardinals. He goes up against the Patriots this week. So we'll see how well he can do against that stout Patriots defense, but I assume he would play pretty well. Moving us on to a second key player from Macy here, we've got Stefon Diggs. This past week, not that great, 10.9 points, but he is currently the wide receiver 5 on the season, so he just had a bad week, much like Kyler did. This week, he goes up against the San Francisco 49ers, so we'll see how well he can perform against them. And for this matchup, I have my winner as a lock pick being Fiala. So, moving on to another matchup, we've got State Farm versus Brian. As I mentioned before, this matchup's only real implications are seeding and who gets that first round bye. So still something to play for, but, not the biggest deal if you lose. So, key players for State Farm. First up, Ryan Tannehill. Pretty all right last week against the Colts. Put up 19.14. This week it gets a bit easier for him as he goes up against the Cleveland Browns. Expecting him to do pretty decent in this matchup. Another key player for State Farm here is Tyler Boyd. Only put up 4.5 points this past week against the Giants, whose defense is not that great. And I mean, this is his second game without his quarterback Joe Burrow. And he goes up against the Miami Dolphins this upcoming week, who is a good team this year. Their defense is pretty solid offense. So we'll see how things can work for T here, or not T, Tyler. So moving on to Brian. First key player here for Brian is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. This past week only put up 4.9 points against the Tampa Bay defense. They were too busy throwing the ball, so they didn't give Clyde any love. But this upcoming week, he goes up against the Denver Broncos, who have I would say, significantly worse defense. So we'll see how well he can perform in this matchup. Moving us on to a second key player for here, Brian, Justin Jefferson, who in his debut as the number one target for Kirk Cousins on the Minnesota Vikings, he put up 26 points. Thielen is going to be back this upcoming week as he has been removed for the COVID list, but I'm still expecting him to be targeted quite heavily as they go up against Jacksonville, who's not that great of a defense, which, could lead to them running the ball more than expected. But, you never know. So, Justin Jefferson, we'll see if he can keep the hot hands, hot feet. What's that dance he does? I don't know. Something. He does a dance. It's got a name. But, yeah, my winner for this matchup is Brian. Moving us on to another matchup. Bruce versus Derek. First up for Bruce, key player is Josh Allen, who last week, it seems like a lot of quarterbacks who you expect to do well don't. Josh Allen did 15.4 against the Chargers, so not that great. But we'll see how well he can do this upcoming week as he goes up against the San Francisco 49ers. Speaking of players doing not that great this past week, we've got Miles Sanders, who put up only 6.2 points in that interesting game against the Seahawks on Sunday night. This upcoming week, he does get a gift, however, in facing arguably the worst defense in terms of run defense, the Green Bay Packers. So we'll see how well he can do, see if he can bounce back after two pretty stinky performances. Um, so yeah, we'll see how Miles can do. Moving us on to Derek's key players. First up, we've got T.Y. Hilton, who actually scored good points. He put up 18.1, and in there was a touchdown. He still didn't get over that 87-yard mark that he hasn't reached since Andrew Luck retired. And however, this upcoming week he goes up against Houston, whose defense is not that great. So we'll see if he can do it against them. Moving us on to second key player here for Derek is Dallas Goedert, who, after Ertz got hurt, had been a bit stinky. After the bye, he scored 7.3. But then this past 2 weeks, he's done quite well, scoring 18.7 and 20.5. So Dallas Goedert is really, showing that he can be a solid tight end. However, Zach Ertz has been removed from the IR. So we'll see if he plays this week, and if he does, if he'll be thrusted right back into the number one starting tight end for the Eagles. So we'll see how well Dallas Goedert can perform this upcoming week. My predicted winner for this matchup is Bruce. Moving us on to the final matchup, and arguably the matchup that has the most stakes on the line. Adam versus Lincoln. Key players for Adam, we've got Russell Wilson. Last week, didn't do super great. 14.4 points only for him against the Philadelphia Eagles, whose defense is not that great. They do have Darius Slay and Fletcher Cox, but other than that, I guess I'm not too versed with the Eagles' starting defensive lineup, but as far as I know, they're not the best. He goes up against another NFC East opponent in the New York Giants. We'll see if Russell can bounce back and cook a bit for you. Moving us on to Adam's second key player, Aaron Jones, who has not been doing as much as you would have liked the last couple weeks. Last week he scored 10, which was preceded by 17.1. Pretty good, but then 13.5 and 12.9. Since his return from injury. This upcoming week, he goes up against the Eagles, who, as I kind of just mentioned, didn't do much, didn't allow much for Russell, but I think the running backs did all right. So we'll see if Aaron Jones can come out and do a good performance for you, which moves us on to Lincoln's key players. First up, we've got Alvin Kamara, who, ever since Taysom Hill took over at quarterback, has been seeing a decreased role. I heard a stat that like 68 or so % of his fantasy points came in the passing game. And in the last 2 weeks, I believe he's only had one reception for -2 yards, if that is correct. Yeah, one reception for -2 yards. So definitely not the kind of production you're looking to get out of Alvin Kamara. This upcoming week, he goes up against Atlanta, whose defense is kind of bad. So we'll see how well Alvin can do against them. He is also questionable right now. He was limited participant in practice on Wednesday due to a foot injury. So we'll see if Alvin can play, and if so, how effective he can be. Which brings us on to your second key player, who actually, just looking through your lineup right now, Lincoln, you have taken him out of your lineup. So I'm going to have to, on the fly, pick a second key player. And I'll just go with Sterling Shepard. I was going to go with Darius Slayton, but you took him out. So we'll go, Sterling Shepard, another Giants receiver. This past week, he did 13.8, which is all right. And he goes up against Seahawks this week, whose passing defense is, while getting better, not the best. So we'll see how well the Giants' passing attack can do. Also now without Daniel Jones, most likely. So now you've got at least 3 starting or backup quarterbacks starting in the NFC East. Do you consider Carson Wentz a starter or a backup? That's up to you. But we'll see how things go. My predicted winner for this matchup is Lincoln. So that will do it for this week's episode of the Mishpo. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed the higher recording quality, because I'm quite psyched about it. And yeah, so that'll just about do it. And so thank you, and thank you.